welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration of Allan Kardec's The Gospel According to Spiritism.
Yes, and it's quite a deep text.
It really is. This isn't just a casual read. We've got a wealth of interconnected ideas here. They're drawn from gospel teachings, spiritual insights, philosophical discussions.
All centered around understanding morality, our spiritual growth, and, well, the nature of suffering and happiness itself.
Exactly. And you, listening, you're probably here because you're looking for real understanding, those aha moments that go beyond the surface.
And that's precisely what we aim to uncover today.
Kardec's work is unique, trying to synthesize these diverse perspectives.
It really is, offering what it presents as a profound understanding of our inner selves and our connection to, a larger spiritual reality.
So our goal in this deep dive?
Well, it's to extract the most relevant and frankly thought-provoking aspects of this synthesis, to offer you a concise yet thorough grasp of his views on living a meaningful life and the architecture, if you will, of the spiritual world.
Okay, let's get right into it then. One of the foundational aspects right at the start is the very basis of Spiritist doctrine. It's not presented as just a human idea, is it?
No, that's a crucial point. The text posits Spiritism as a revelation, something originating from spirits themselves.
Which immediately makes you ask, how do you even validate that kind of claim?
Right, and Kardec addresses this. He introduces this concept of a universal test.
A universal test? How does that work?
The idea is if numerous spirits communicating across different times, different places, consistently convey the same core moral teachings,
then that agreement provides a kind of validation.
Exactly, a validation through consensus. It's quite a forward-thinking idea for its time, suggesting this sort of decentralized knowledge gathering, but in a spiritual context.
But how do you know it's genuine consensus and not just, a widely held mistake?
Well, Kardec's emphasis on core moral teachings is key there. It suggests there's a universal ethical intuition, like a bedrock of truth that resonates.
So the strength is in that consistency across independent sources.
Precisely. But importantly, the text also advises caution. Don't treat every single message from the spirit world as absolute truth.
Especially if it goes beyond those core moral ideas.
Yes. It explains that spirits, well, like us, they exist at various stages of development. They have different levels of knowledge, understanding.
And they could be wrong, or even deceptive.
Yes, the potential for error or deception is acknowledged. And when Kardec talks about discarnate spirits, he just means spirits without a physical body existing in the spiritual realm.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. What if a spirit gives some unique information, maybe something that even contradicts others? How do you evaluate that?
The touchstone, according to this view, becomes what's called universal opinion.
Universal opinion?
Yeah, the collective wisdom that emerges from all this widespread exchange with the spirit world over time, that's presented as the ultimate authority, the supreme judge, you might say.
So individual variations pop up, but the long-term consensus on the big moral and spiritual laws is what really matters.
That's the idea. That's what carries the most weight.
And Kardec seemed pretty optimistic about where this could lead.
He did. The text anticipates a future where Spiritism achieves widespread understanding, maybe even becomes a unifying force for humanity under a shared ethical framework.
A sort of global harmony based on these principles.
That's the hope expressed, yes. Resolving uncertainties, fostering interconnectedness.
Now, shifting gears a bit, to really grasp the Gospels themselves, Kardec hammers home the importance of historical context.
Oh, absolutely vital. You can't just read these ancient texts with modern eyes and expect to get the original meaning.
You risk misunderstanding things completely.
Easily. The meaning of words back then, the social customs, the specific historical situations, all essential for accurate interpretation. Otherwise, you distort the intent.
Can you give us an example? How does that context change things?
Sure. Take the animosity between the Jews and the Samaritans.
Right, that comes up a lot.
It wasn't just random dislike. It stemmed from really deep religious differences that had built up over centuries. The text even compares the Samaritans to the Protestants of their time.
That's a striking analogy.
It highlights how both groups diverged from the mainstream religious practices and interpretations of their day.
That really does clarify it. What about other groups mentioned? Like the Pharisees.
The Pharisees are depicted as, well, intensely focused on outward religious rituals, sometimes prioritizing the external stuff over genuine inner piety.
To the point of hypocrisy sometimes.
That's the critique, yes. And they were keen on maintaining their authority, resistant to new ideas. And you have the publicans.
But tax collectors.
Right, for Rome in Judea, generally despised by the Jewish population for obvious reasons.
And the first Christians weren't called Christians initially.
A fascinating detail, isn't it? They were known as Nazarenes. Understanding these social, political dynamics adds so much depth to the gospel stories.
It really does. So with that historical backdrop, let's dive into a really core idea for Spiritism, reincarnation.
Okay, this isn't just a philosophical side note. It's presented as absolutely fundamental to our spiritual journey.
The idea of being born again.
It's interpreted literally as reincarnation. A necessary condition, the text argues, for truly understanding the kingdom of God.
And it connects this to figures like John the Baptist.
Yes, it explicitly mentions the belief, prevalent then, that John the Baptist was actually the prophet Elijah, reborn.
So why this cycle? Why keep coming back to physical life?
It's seen as the engine of spiritual progress. Each life offers chances to learn, to grow, to refine ourselves.
And we don't necessarily do it alone.
Often not. Spirits tend to incarnate in groups, reuniting with souls they've known before, to support each other, work through old issues, maybe make amends for past wrongs.
And our basic personality, our tendencies, they carry over.
That's the idea. Our core ideas, tendencies, even strong passions aren't just wiped clean at death, they persist.
So this connects to the idea of spiritual progress across lives?
Yeah.
But what about the tough parts, the suffering? How does that fit in?
Right. Kardec tackles that directly. Afflictions aren't seen as random. They often serve a specific purpose in this ongoing journey.
And where does Earth fit in this grand scheme?
Earth is described as a trial and expiation world.
Meaning?
A challenging place. We encounter difficulties specifically designed to help us learn and evolve spiritually.
But not every life here is necessarily about paying for past mistakes.
No, that's an important clarification. It's not always about expiation. For instance, the text suggests that what we might see as primitive peoples are simply spirits at an earlier stage of learning and development.
And the Earth itself is evolving.
Yes, the ultimate destiny foreseen for Earth is to transform into a regenerative world. A more spiritually advanced, harmonious place where divine law is more fully lived.
Which brings us squarely to that difficult question of suffering. How does Spiritism make sense of the afflictions we face? And for you listening, how might this view change how you see your own challenges?
Well, from this perspective, afflictions aren't always direct punishment for specific past actions. Often, they can be trials.
Trials, as in tests.
Yes, trials that the spirit has, in a way, chosen for itself before incarnating, as a means of purification, a way to speed up its spiritual advancement.
So there's a difference between paying a debt, expiation, and taking on a challenge, a trial.
Exactly. The text distinguishes them. Expiations often provoke complaint, resentment. Trials are more often born with resignation, acceptance.
It must be incredibly hard to endure something difficult if you don't consciously remember why it's happening.
Absolutely. And the temporary forgetfulness of past lives during our physical existence is presented as, well, a necessary part of the process, a kind of veil.
But that memory isn't gone forever.
No. Upon returning to the spirit world, or sometimes even during moments of, say, deep spiritual insight or near-death experiences, the spirit can regain those memories. It can understand the reasons behind the suffering.
So our perspective makes a huge difference, whether we see life just physically or from that bigger spiritual view.
A profound impact, yes. It changes how we experience and cope with difficulties.
What about suicide then? People often see it as an escape from suffering.
Spiritism views it very differently, as a violation of divine law.
With negative consequences.
Significant negative repercussions in the spirit world, yes. Instead of relief, it's believed to lead to even greater distress. The exact opposite of what was hoped for. The idea is we don't have the right to cut short a life given for growth and learning.
Okay, let's shift now to some of the core moral teachings Kardec highlights, especially how Spiritism interprets them. The Beatitudes, for example.
Yes, they take on a specific spiritual weight. Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Interpreted as?
Blessed are the humble. It's a critique of earthly hierarchies, emphasizing that ultimate equality we all share as spirit.
And blessed are the meek.
Understood as meaning that justice will eventually be done for the peace-loving. That exploitation by the aggressive won't last forever. especially when love and charity prevail.
Mercy and forgiveness seem absolutely central.
Hugely important. Blessed are the merciful underscores forgiveness, not just as a nice idea, but something with profound effects, morally and spiritually.
Affecting our inner peace.
And even our relationships in the spirit world. Forgiveness helps avoid things like spiritual obsession, those lingering negative ties caused by unresolved resentments.
And the advice is to reconcile quickly.
Yes, reconcile with adversaries without delay.
What about do not judge? That's a big one.
Yeah.
How's it seen here?
It's nuanced. Judging just to condemn or discredit someone, that's wrong. But offering constructive criticism, maybe even a reprimand, aimed at correcting harmful behavior, that can actually be a moral duty. For the good of all, the key is the motivation behind the judgment.
And the ultimate ethical command, love your neighbor as yourself.
That's presented as the complete package, really. The ultimate expression of charity. The bedrock for true fraternity, peace, justice. It covers all our moral duties to each other.
The text also touches on render unto Caesar.
Right, fulfilling civic duties in their proper place. And the really challenging one, loving your enemies.
How is that framed?
As a sublime application of charity. A victory over our own selfishness and pride. Though, importantly, it doesn't mean you have to feel the same tenderness for an enemy as for a close friend.
And vengeance.
Strongly condemned. Called a barbaric custom, a sign of spiritual backwardness.
Along with things like dueling and suicide again.
Yes, those are seen as forms of moral weakness, moral cowardice.
Then there's that beautiful phrase, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
It perfectly captures modest beneficence, right? Genuine generosity without needing applause, contrasted sharply with charity done out of pride, just seeking recognition.
The text also distinguishes types of giving.
It does. Giving expecting something back versus truly selfless giving to those who can't possibly repay you, symbolized by inviting the poor and lame.
And it's not just about material help.
No, there's material charity, meeting physical needs, and moral charity, things like indulgence, forgiveness, benevolence, kind words.
And ultimately, charity in this broad sense is...
It's the anchor of salvation, the purest reflection of the Creator's love. Foundational.
Okay, let's talk about material possessions. Wealth. How does Spiritism view it? It's not automatically bad.
No, not inherently bad, but it comes with significant responsibility. It's seen as a kind of stewardship, a trust.
One will be held accountable for.
That's the idea. Good use means actively benefiting others, helping prevent misery, not just personal indulgence.
And the warning against serving mammon.
Yes, the danger of prioritizing material wealth over our connection with the divine.
And duty. How does that fit in?
Duty is presented as a core moral obligation. To ourselves, to others. Guided by conscience, often pushing against immediate self-interest.
So what constitutes true spiritual perfection then? Not just outward stuff.
Exactly. True perfection, the text stresses, is about the inner transformation. Reforming the spirit, cultivating humility, charity. Not about outward asceticism or self-torture.
The sincerity seems crucial too. Genuine faith, not just performing rituals.
Absolutely. The text mentions that famous line, many are called, but few are chosen.
Why so few?
Because, it suggests, true adherence means actually practicing Christ's core principles. Love, humility, charity, not just going through the motions of devotion.
And true faith.
It's linked with humility and real trust in God, not presumption or just blindly following dogma. Interestingly, it even connects strong faith to things like magnetic healing.
Suggesting it works by natural spiritual laws.
That's the implication. And importantly, faith isn't something you can prescribe or force on someone.
It has to be acquired.
Through a sincere personal search for those fundamental spiritual truths.
There's also this concept of the workers of the last hour. What's that about?
It refers to that parable of the vineyard workers. The point being that spiritual reward isn't just about how long you've been on the job, so to speak.
It's more about
The sincerity of your effort, your goodwill, even if you come to it late.
And Spiritists are seen as part of this group.
They're presented as being among those chosen ones of God for this current era, with a mission to share the divine word, but more importantly, to live the principles. Selflessness, disinterestedness, kindness, even when facing opposition.
And there's advice on telling true teachers from false ones.
Yes, true prophets are known by their humble actions, their selfless service. not by self-proclaiming or being proud. It also warns about deceptive spirits, discarnate ones who might falsely use revered names.
Okay, broadening out again.
Yeah,
The discussion touches on things like marriage and how new ideas impact society.
right. The text views the ideal of indissoluble marriage as being rooted in the spiritual law of love, going beyond just legal contracts or material interests.
And what about those challenging words of Jesus about bringing a sword, causing division?
That's explained as an almost inevitable consequence. His teachings challenge deeply entrenched power structures and beliefs. That challenge naturally leads to conflict initially.
But ultimately for purification.
Yes, leading eventually to greater understanding. There's even a point made that the amount of opposition a new idea stirs up can be an indicator of its importance,
And it reflects on why religious conflict has happened historically.
often due to misinterpreting core teachings, neglecting those fundamental principles like charity and love.
How does Spiritism explain how divine truth is communicated, like through the Gospels? Why use parables?
Parables are seen as a way to reveal deep truths gradually, tailored to what the audience could grasp at that specific time.
But the truth isn't meant to stay hidden forever.
No. The saying, "do not hide your lamp under a bushel," means truth should come out as people develop their understanding, as they seek a more rational faith.
So no absolute, forever hidden mysteries.
The text asserts that what seems hidden will eventually be known. Everything will be brought to light in time.
And mediumship, that ability to communicate with spirits.
It's presented as a gift given without distinction, a tool for spirits to bring light and correction to everyone, reflecting God's desire for everyone's salvation.
And it takes courage to live these beliefs openly.
Yes, the courage of faith is emphasized, professing your beliefs even when facing opposition.
Okay, our final area. Seeking divine help and the power of prayer. What are the key takeaways here?
Well, that phrase, "seek and you shall find," is interpreted quite practically. Divine providence helps those who trust and act, often by inspiring useful ideas or insights.
So prayer isn't just about asking for stuff.
The suggestion is that prayer should focus more on seeking spiritual qualities, patience, resignation, faith, strength, rather than just asking for material things or trying to get out of necessary trials.
And the effectiveness of prayer depends on.
Sincerity, real thought and understanding behind the words, not just repeating formulas, especially in languages you don't understand.
Prayer is seen as a source of joy.
Yes, a communion with the divine, a source of real solace and strength.
And the Lord's Prayer gets special attention.
Analyzed for its deeper meanings. For instance, "lead us not into temptation" is reframed as asking for the strength to resist evil influences when temptation arises.
And there are prayers for different situations.
Yes, for daily needs, material and spiritual, for help against negative influences, for submission to God's will, for thanksgiving, for those suffering, even for the hardened.
And praying together.
That's significant too, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, underscoring the power of communal prayer offered with genuine kindness and mutual support.
So as we wrap up this really insightful deep dive into the gospel according to Spiritism, it's clear, isn't it? At its core, there's this profound emphasis on how everything connects.
Absolutely. Our moral choices, our spiritual evolution through reincarnation, understanding why we suffer, and above all, the absolute importance of love and charity.
As guiding principles for everything.
For our lives, and within that larger cosmic picture Kardec paints.
And these aren't just, abstract ideas floating around.
No, they're meant to be practical, guidelines for daily living, offering a path towards personal growth, better relationships, a deeper connection to that spiritual side of ourselves.
Right. So with that in mind, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. In what ways do these principles challenge your current ideas about happiness or success, or even the basic meaning of life?
Yeah, which of these concepts really resonated with you? Which ones sparked something? And how might that inspire you to perhaps explore Kardec's The Gospel According to Spiritism even further on your own?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.